Welcome to Autism Parenting Magazine. I'm Debi Taylor, and I am thrilled to be speaking with founder of Anova, Andrew Bailey. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me today, Debbie. Pleasure to be here.
Before we jump into the questions, the first thing I have to say is I was on your website, and as a parent of a child on the autism spectrum myself, one thing that jumped out at me was your students were so engaged in the photos, and they looked like they were having a blast. That's not typical in a traditional school setting for many kids with challenges on the spectrum.
Well, that's interesting that you should point that out because that is one of the success stories that we have with all of our students and families that are living with autism is this notion that we've given our children a happy childhood or given them their childhood back, because that is one of the primary indicators of a successful program is kids that are smiling and looking happy and looking engaged and looking like they're enjoying being alive today and every day. And that is one of the most organic measures we use with our children is are they happy, are they engaged, are they enjoying their lives? And then we move on to the more details and techniques about how to achieve that.
That's great. Yeah, it absolutely looked genuine and made me want that for my son as well. Tell me exactly what is the Anova method of education?
Well, the Anova method of education is a conglomerate of a number of different strategies that are some emerging and others have been around for quite some time. Specifically, it is a blend of sensory integration and occupational therapy techniques which are more emerging, along with social thinking, social cognition, perspective taking, theory of mind type of interventions which are based on some older theories, but the techniques around them are also emerging, blended with some more traditional ABA type techniques of reinforcement and error correction, and then rolling in a very highly adapted and modified educational curriculum because many of our students are on a high school diploma track and have above average to even superior quite different learners and acquire and disseminate information differently than some neurotypical kids, and so we're constantly striving to adapt and modify our curriculum to meet the state standards, but also to meet the needs of our different learners. So those would be the four cornerstones of the program: the sensory integration, the social thinking, the positive behavior support, and the highly structured and individualized academic curriculum. As I said, all of those interventions have been used in some degree or another in different programs and in different geographical regions. But what we've done is combine those in a truly multidisciplinary format where the sensory integration interventions are being implemented in the speech therapy clinic by the speech therapist, who's also implementing the positive behavior supports. And so we have a very intensive, truly disciplinary strategy. And what we found is that we're taking kids that didn't want to go to school, didn't want to be alive in many cases, and are reintroducing them to the joys of learning and to the joys of being social. And it just takes some tools for many of our kids to be able to benefit from things that you and I might be able to do more naturally and intuitively. And that's where we get back to the joy of childhood. If kids are feeling comfortable in their bodies because they're regulated sensory-wise, and then they're able to talk to other people based on what they know people might be thinking about them using the perspective taking, it makes it a lot easier to have friends and be successful in your job or in your school. And that makes the job of the behaviorist much easier because you don't have a lot of the social and emotional underpinnings of the behavior problems of Asperger's. And so we've really seen some great success and progress with some extremely difficult to serve teenagers and young children who have been excluded from a number of programs primarily because of behavior, now being able to receive high school level academics and go on to be fully functioning adults because they can put aside those sensory social things that led to those behaviors, which we're very encouraged by that.
That's amazing. It sounds like you are truly and holistically setting each child up for success using their strengths, and that's just wonderful. Do I understand you started Anova Schools in your garage with a co-founder, 3 employees, and just 4 students?
That is correct. We actually started Anova with the intention of keeping kids in their public school placement, because we're firm believers that children living with autism have the right to be educated in their neighborhood school along with neurotypical peers and their brothers and sisters. We're still firm believers in that, and we provide a variety of the same services that we provide in our schools in public schools and in homes, where we provide home-based services and public school-based services that we did out of the garage here in Santa Rosa, California for the first 3 or 4 years, from 2000 to 2003. However, in 2004, we could no longer stand by while kids that we're now working with at our schools, those kids with Asperger's and high-functioning autism, were sitting at home, either on home instruction or in programs for cognitively lower functioning students who are not doing state standards, or even worse, for programs that were designed primarily for conduct disordered or emotionally disturbed pupils, is where many of the children we were attempting to serve ended up if they weren't successful in public school. So in 2003, we moved out and started the Anova School in Santa Rosa with 3 students. And now we're in our 11th year. We have over 200 students in our 3 school campuses, which is not something we had planned. It is a reflection of the serious need for high-quality educational programs for students who have academic and cognitive abilities, and also are on the spectrum and have some of the social, emotional, and behavioral challenges that perhaps the lower functioning students have, but for whom there are no adequate programs. And so we've been floored and astounded by the response to our school programs over the last 10 years, and that's pretty much where we've devoted most of our energy. However, we still have that garage mentality of not working in our own sites, but being out there in the community, in your home, and in the grocery store, and at the neighborhood park, helping our community understand the needs of our families and students with autism, and helping those students and families adapt to the smelly, loud, overstimulating world that we sometimes live in. And so that's a partnership between the community and our families that we strive to enhance, and that's always will be a huge part of our mission, whether we're out in your home or in your park, or whether we're here in our Anova schools.
Wow, it's so very necessary what you're teaching and the mission that you're on. Are there any plans to grow this to other states or other communities in metro areas where they could definitely use this kind of community?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would love to be able to replicate this model and to provide the tools for others to do so, and everywhere that it's needed. And from my reading and from what I believe, I can't help but believe there are students and families all over the United States who have the needs of the families that we're serving, and there are probably school districts and public and private agencies out there that are still struggling to develop the programs necessary to serve all of our kids. And so I know the need is huge, and I know that what we can do is very helpful. It's just a matter of trying to muster the resources to carry this, what was an experimental model 10 years ago, out to the masses of people, and making sure that it's actually worthy of public funding and worthy of moms and dads' trust from our therapists before trying to replicate it. But the short answer to your question is yes, we have presented our model at conferences. We are displaying it on websites. I actively receive and field calls from professionals from all over the country that we're helping to train to use our model so they can help kids in their own backyards without having to wait for us to show up and do it. And then we also have some plans in the future to develop additional school sites here in California. As far as other Anova opening schools in other states and other cities, I wouldn't rule that out, but that's not in our 5-year strategic plan.
Well,
But
you've got a fan here in Atlanta, that's for sure.
Well, Atlanta's a lovely part of the world. I driven through and spent quite a bit of time in Georgia from the South, and I grew up visiting relatives in Florida and Kentucky and Virginia and Tennessee, and so I know that part of the country very well, and I'm certain that the great minds that are there residing in Atlanta are actively working on innovative programs for the kids there that you have that are like our kids. And anything we can do to help, to even give little tidbits to anyone who may read this or see this that wants to try what we're doing, I would highly encourage our multidisciplinary model. It is quite effective, and there are many, many folks out there who could benefit from it.
That is great. What are some of your favorite success stories?
Well, the success stories that I think are my favorites are ones that generally go back to how parents view child rearing and having kids, and not so much individual techniques. Obviously, teaching kids how to talk and say mom or dad for the first time is huge, and we've all been there when the 2 or 3-year-old child with autism says their first words and produces tears for their parents. But the ones for me are smaller, more poignant, more big picture things. And I think the most recent example of a success story for me would be a student that we're serving in our school who the school district and probably his parents too believed that this individual had schizophrenia, because that's what the school psychologist and a number of other professionals believed was happening with this young man. Because, as you know, students with Asperger's and high-functioning autism often present like kids that may have another mental condition. And that was the case with this young man. He was quite agitated. He was not doing well in school. He was threatening himself and peers, and couldn't make it through a day, and about 5th or 6th. And when we got a hold of this young man, the district and the parents were considering residential treatment. Our school was being viewed as a last resort for this kid, and it was on the hunch that perhaps maybe he might be on the spectrum after all. And when I met this student, I immediately saw him as a student with Asperger's and not someone with schizophrenia. And I'm a licensed therapist, and so I am able to make that distinction. And so we accepted this student into our school at the 60-day IEP meeting, where we met to review his progress, and he was making enormous progress. He immediately stabilized when he was given access to the sensory integration therapies that we implement, and our social therapies and behavioral therapies. The things that school thought were hallucinations and other schizophrenic symptoms immediately resolved, because they were actually sensory and other social reflections of his anxiety. But at his IEP meeting, his mom and his dad were there, and his father is a large gentleman who was quite quiet, and I had never met him before. His mom I had met, and she spent an hour going on and on about how great her son was doing and how happy she was, and we all were pretty pleased with his progress, and we agreed to sign him up for another year of service at the school through the IEP. But I couldn't help ask this father, as the meeting was ending, what he was thinking, because he hadn't said a word. And I know there had been some controversy, and I said, sir, I'd like to know if you don't what you think about your son's progress and everything you've heard today. And he immediately burst into tears. And he said, I've been sitting here at this meeting the entire time afraid to say anything, because the problems my son was having in school and all the struggles we were having were so overwhelming, and I had no idea what to do about them. My wife did everything. I kept quiet, and I suffered silently. And I have to admit that a month or two ago, before my son started at your school, at this Anova school, I didn't want to be a father anymore. And it wasn't until today's meeting that I realized that that's part of the problem, and that you guys have made me want to be a dad again. And I was ashamed to admit that until just now when you asked me, but I can't hold it in anymore. I have to tell you that you made me want to be a dad again for my son. And I don't care how many new words a kid learns or how many percentiles he goes up on this test or that, to have a mom keep her baby out of a residential facility and have a dad who didn't know what to do get involved enough to come to a meeting and say, you made me want to be a dad again, is both heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time. Happy story. It's 3 years later. This young man is completely changed person, and we're now talking about his return to public high school so he can go to the prom and the football game and do the things that Anova wanted to do with all of our kids from the beginning, which is give them access to their public school. And so that, for me, is a good example, and happily a common example. That's a success story that I can say we can repeat a few dozen times every single year. We take kids that are miserable, that are not enjoying their lives, and the family is not enjoying being a family because of what happens with children with neurological problems that aren't feeling at one with the world. And so just allowing the family to be able to function, go to a family reunion, go to church on Sunday, survive Christmas, be able to say my childhood was happy. Those are the stories that we consider success stories, and why I do what I do every day.
Wow, I'm at a loss for words. That is just moving and so inspiring, and I'm honored to be speaking with you because I absolutely love what you're doing. We are running out of time. That you did mention Christmas, and I wanted to just get your thoughts. Now, the holidays are really stressful for all families of all different abilities, but specifically for children on the spectrum. There's a lot of disruption in routine, and sometimes travel and groups and crowds gathering and things like that. It can be very, very stressful. Do you have any tips to ease holiday stress?
Well, just knowing that those things are going to happen. As a behavior analyst, first and foremost, you always want to anticipate the antecedents to any kind of a problem. Antecedents meaning the environment, what goes on. And if you're looking at the Christmas or holiday environment, it doesn't matter which denomination, it's a change in routine. There's time off of school. The sensory issues are enormous. All the sights and smells and sounds of Christmas things and Hanukkah and all of the other holidays are things that we as adults seek out. Many of our kids have a real hard time with those kinds of sensory experiences, and so just knowing your child, knowing whether your child is a sensory avoider or a sensory seeker, knowing what kind of social milieus can be problematic. If going to a family reunion with family members that might be conflictual is problematic. A front-loading session where you're talking to students about, or kids in this case, their family members about how to play with cousin Johnny or play with cousin Susie, and remember that playing ping pong has been a high-risk situation, then avoid playing ping pong. We go so far as to help parents train students on how to get food from a buffet. You don't take 10 cookies from the buffet table when you line up. And if you do that, you'll get, and people will say things to you that might make you feel bad about yourself, in which case you have a verbal conflict, and then mom and dad have to get involved. And so there are all kinds of ways that you can talk to the higher cognitively functioning kids about how to help themselves and how to manage their own sensory issues and how to front load them on social things that can be problematic, things to say and things not to say. Kids that are nonverbal and others that don't have as much control over their own environments and their own what happens to them, obviously have all those tools in place. Have your picture exchange system there. Have a break system in place where if the sensory stuff gets too overwhelming that you can escape to a quiet place. Carry the headphones, carry the fidgets, have the device available, the iPad, soothe kids or to calm them down. Know what your escape hatches are. How do I calm my child down? How do I get them out of here if there's a problem? How do I teach them how to ask for help? How to ask for a break or asking for help are the two most pivotal responses that we teach. And at the holidays, if you can get help or get a break, you can usually solve for most of your sensory or social problems. And we can all enjoy the little parts of the holidays. And I think in many ways, having a child with autism forces us to slow down and enjoy the simple parts of each of those holidays, the smell of the trees and the sound of food cooking in the kitchen and the little things, and then to reduce our expectations about getting everything on your wish list or having the party turn out exactly the way you want it to is a good reminder that the small joys and the small accomplishments should be what all of us, even as adults, are seeking out. And I like to look at being around children with autism around the holidays as a good way for each of us to slow down and enjoy the more important pieces of that, which is spending a little bit of time with a loved one or enjoying the taste of that cookie or a few moments of silence near the tree with no one else around.
Amen to that. Those are great tips. And yeah, I definitely learn a lot from my son about how to slow down, especially because I'm originally from New York, so I'm always go, 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 you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in New York at the holidays, and New York alone can be overstimulating with all the sights and smells and those great things that we love about New York are the things that we love about the holidays, is that they're bright and shiny and exciting and fun and loud, and they smell good and they taste good, and that's those experiences are ripe for disappointment for neurotypical people, and they're certainly ripe for disappointment with kids with autism. But with the right techniques and the right frame of mind, you can find some real joy and some real happiness in those couple of weeks off around the holidays.
That's great. Well, tell everyone how they can find out more about Anova if they're interested in your program or just want to learn more about you.
Well, they can certainly visit us at our website, anovaeducation.org, and it's a rather robust site. Information about me and Anova and how we started, about our philosophies and our techniques, and then all of the various services that we make available. And we are here in Northern California, but we are helping kids all over the state of California, and we're pretty close to the airport, so we can jump on a plane and fly to where you are and help you there too. We have done quite a bit of work in areas around the country for folks who might need a little bit of extra help. So go to anovaeducation.org, ANOVA, and you'll have all the information. And then if you need help from us, you know how to get a hold of us. We're right there on the web.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you for having me, Debbie. It's been an absolute pleasure spending this moment speaking with you about something that I know that you and I both share, which is a love for children and a love for children who have different needs and who might need a bit more support. And so being kindred spirits to future discussions.
Well, thank you so much, and happy holidays to you.
Take care.